Hey everybody, it's Miss Cole, and so this is my first time doing a video like this. It's going to be a really interesting experiment. I'm going to take you around my classroom, and I'm going to talk to you about the posters that I have up on my walls, and also show you some of them. But the reason I'm doing this is because I have to take all of them down because they're going to paint the walls this summer. So this is also for me so that I know where everything goes, where I want it to go, and why I have it where I do. So here we go. I think I'll start with the back of the room, which is the back wall is stuff that is interesting and or important to me. You can kind of see back behind me here. There are things that say Miss Cole on them. These are things that students have made for me. But in addition, there are also things that I just think are cool or important or interesting. This poster is actually a screenshot, I think, from a Reddit thread about editing a Wikipedia page. So it's Wikipedia is a source that I encourage students to use just for a starter, but not something that I would say that they should use as a scholarly source, because it isn't one. So students a lot of times have been told, don't use Wikipedia, but I go, I say it's okay to start there, but just don't finish there. All right, so some other things back here. Up at the top, this is one of the very few, in fact, it's the only instructional poster I have on the back wall, and that's because this poster has to do with presentations. And so this is something that a student can see from the front of the room when they're presenting, so it's a reminder to them. Below that, I have a bit from Meditation 17. A lot of thematically what we look at is the connection and the tension between individuality and connection to others. So no man is an island entire of itself. Any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. So we talk about our connections to others and how, when that conflicts with what we want for ourselves, how we navigate that. The Makomori test is something, if you're familiar with the Bechdel test, the Makomori test was sort of developed sort of in contrast to that. So I have a picture from Pacific Rim. And below that, I have pictures from when I went to Hollywood Studios and took a drawing class on how to draw a stitch. This one is from the original artist and who taught the class, and this one is my rendition. You can see that it's not quite the same, it's not perfect, but that's part of the lesson there. Things don't have to be perfect to be appreciated. Up here we've got Captain Phasma encouraging you to read, or else. I like Captain Phasma a lot. She's got shiny armor, she's different. She's a female stormtrooper, she's evil. She's allowed to be evil as a female character, and she's tall. I mean, she's tall. Gwendolyn Christie is tall and kind of bulky and muscular. You see this more when she's in her character from the Game of Thrones, Brienne of Tarth, but the same is true for non-traditional women. I really identify strongly with her, and so I admire that a lot. Mae Jemison, I don't know, you can kind of tell down there at the bottom that I added some other things. She's had an amazing set of experiences, an amazing career, and so I added in some additional information about her. And down here, we talk about perspective, especially with students, we talk about differentiation and that not everybody has the same needs. Down here again, we have just a little thing from Disney World. And then also I have calendar pages that feature some of my favorite works of art. This is from a calendar that's all Impressionists, and Green Dancer by Degas is probably my favorite artistic piece. I like the use of color. It's beautiful. And the implied movement there. I just like it a lot. So this is an example of a Venn diagram, and we do Venn diagrams in class. I like this one because it has 3. It's also just fun. We usually do Venn diagrams with just 2 circles because Venn diagrams get much more complicated the more circles you add. I also have some information about some of the community theater that I've done. And then Ursula Le Guin is an amazing, or I guess was, an amazing writer. And so, the art of words, relevant to class as well. Up here is a poster that I printed out just from an image that I found online. This was from a poem that was used at Biden's inauguration. And the idea of looking for opportunities and taking them. The influence of Shakespeare, of course, there's a lot of the reason he's taught is because of the influence that he's had on our language. Over here, next, this is the only actual movie poster that I have. I didn't like episode 1 very much, you guys. I found it was just crushed. It crushed my soul. But at the same time, I love this poster. And I use it, of course, as an example of, quite literally, foreshadowing. Below it, I've got my media bias chart. I use this in the research unit. I get students to look at an event that's covered by 2 different sources and to compare how those sources present what happened and the type of language that they use. Next is my window. It's a little hard to see. You can kind of see I've got blinds up there, but natural light, very important. Up at the top of the window, I've got, let me see if you can see it here. I've got a screen and you can't see anything because of that. Okay, so that allows me to block out the light on days when we're using the projector. Also, very important, never use apostrophes to make words plural. There are some style guides that say there are some cases when you should do this. I just say don't. Find another way to phrase it. If you are talking about there are only 7 A's in the class, just say there are only 7 students who got an A in the class. So it keeps it consistent, and then you don't have to worry about plural versus possessive. Makes it easier. So just a quote here, very important. And then also Jane Goodall. I like that poster. I think it's cheeky and fun. The literature poster is actually from a project that my students did years ago. We talked about what literature is, and then I made that poster as a result of that. One of Monet's water lily paintings, and then about what we're looking for in terms of critical thinking. Probably my favorite XKCD comic. The oatmeal, also an influence on me. I do see this in my students' writing, so this is a reminder for them. And then up here, we're up at the front of the room now. The window's on the side. And then this is sort of a motivational poster. Students, in many cases, are used to, and especially in honors classes, are used to getting things right the first time. And if you've looked at my failure video, you'll see that that's one of the things that I really emphasize to students, that they don't have to get things right the first time, that it's normal not to get things right the first time, and it's understandable, and it doesn't make you worse of a person or decrease your value. It gives you the opportunity to learn from mistakes and to grow. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it's usually very uncomfortable, but it's important, and it helps you develop resilience and persistence, and those are good qualities to have. Pronouns. This is really reinforcement, but by the time students are in 10th grade, they often learn this in elementary school, and it doesn't get reinforced a lot through middle school. So they're sort of like, okay, I know this stuff, but we kind of go back and forth on how well they know it. The things that are up at the front of the room, as you see here, are ones that, students are facing, like the clock and the flag, and they're ones that I want students to think about on a pretty regular basis. I want, I don't necessarily talk about them all the time, but I do reference them, and they are things that are like, I really, really want students to think about a lot. This poster is front and center, and you can kind of tell that it's been up there a long time because that Just Solutions, that used to be green. It's interesting to me that the red has not faded, but the green really has. It's not to say that I don't care about students' excuses or why something didn't happen, but I'm more interested in why something happened so that we can figure out what to do about it. The solution is what matters. Look for solutions, look for what to do. Don't just dwell on why something didn't work. So this is a poster I made, and if you look at the quote, you'll see that it's actually from The Dark Knight, but the original quote from The Dark Knight is, "You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And I changed that because obviously it's a villainous character who says that. The truth of the matter is it can go the other way just as easily. And that's Xena's story. She starts off as an antagonist for Hercules, but then because of their interaction, she starts questioning what she's doing. And she ends up deciding to try to make amends for what she's done. And that becomes the motivation for her actions in her spin-off series. And It's a pretty good series if you haven't watched it. All right, so we're almost at the final wall of my classroom. It's a pretty big classroom. That's one of the reasons I like it. I have lots of wall space. So here we go, and we have my door. So on my door, I've got thought without action creates nothing. Action without thought creates problems. And that, of course, from 1984. I love this particular Big Brother because he's not ugly, but he is kind of creepy. Above my door, I have my Challenge Yourself poster. And the reason for this, it used to be blue, now it's kind of gray. It matches the door frame. The reason for this is that when students go out of my room, they're going to have to challenge themselves. But while they're in my room, I tell them, don't worry about it. I'll take care of that. I ask students to avoid these two words in their writing. They're useless. They don't actually add a whole lot. Down here, we use the poem Lost Generation as a way to begin poetry analysis. We look through, and then one of the things I point out to them is that in a poem, quite often at the end is where we can begin to see the main idea. I've got a quote down here from Stephen Hawking, and then beside it, I've got a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Sometimes I am concerned that students are less concerned about honor and more concerned about their grades. It is what it is. That's what our society values in many cases. These are my 3 rules for writing. Don't confuse me, don't bore me, don't lie to me. Don't confuse me because if I can't tell what you're saying, none of the rest of it matters. Don't bore me because if your reader loses interest, that means that they're going to stop reading. And don't lie to me because, I can tell. I ask students to be authentic in their writing, not necessarily to worry about sticking to facts. Fact and fiction is not the same thing as truth and lies, and we talk about that a lot. This is my favorite quote, and so it has a place of prominence right up at the top. Below this, I have a paragraph about the importance of variety. There's nothing wrong with 5-word sentences, but using variety in your writing makes it more interesting. It makes it flow better. My green bulletin board has a lot of information about grammar, and it also features some student work from previous semesters. I love featuring student work. One of my goals for next semester is to cycle through current and previous student work. So helping verbs and prepositions, possessives, and parts of speech. Down here, Starry Night, one of my calendar pictures. And then one of the standards deals with having support from the text. So how do you know? It's not just enough to have support from the text, you also need to respond to it. This is from when I was a yearbook advisor. And one of the challenges as a teacher is that I'm an agent of the state. So my freedom of speech is to some degree abridged when I'm in the classroom or when I am acting as an agent of the school because I'm not just speaking for myself. So I have to be very aware of that. I talk with students about that as well, that I do have responsibilities in how I act and what I say. It's part of the job. There are limits on the freedom of speech, as we'll see in just a minute. This is another way of looking at it. Stacey Abrams, that we won't necessarily be perfect the first time, that we may not always be the best, but that's okay. It's important to compare ourselves to ourselves. It's also hard to do. If you figure out how to do that, let me know. And then I do want to look, these are again student work here, and this is another one from XKCD that I like. Free speech, again, is not without limits. Up here above this, I don't want to be a bully. We talk about bullying, and sometimes it seems to mean to students, when someone's bullying me, it means they're doing something I don't like. Well, not everything that you don't like counts as bullying. But sometimes when students want to object to what I'm saying or doing, they'll use that as an excuse to interrupt instruction. That's not okay. You don't get to take away somebody else's learning opportunity. Don't do that. But at the same time, I want to be the best teacher that I can. So please talk to me about things that I'm doing that upset you or hurt you, so that I can fix them, because I want to do that. As we're getting back around, hi, Spider-Man. What worked, what didn't, what next? This is general problem solving, but I focus on this in terms of writing specifically. These are the 3 things that I use, especially on rough drafts. What to do, what are you doing well? What do you need to work on? And where do we go from here? That's kind of a big question. The classroom isn't set up the way I want to because of COVID, so we've had to do social distancing. But I've already got my class map on the board for next year so that hopefully we can be the way I want it to be. So this is an example of how I like to have my classroom laid out, student desks in tables of 4 to 5. It encourages collaboration. My assignments are set up so that they can't copy each other, but they are encouraged to give personal responses and reflections, and also to discuss them with other students. I hope you've enjoyed this tour of my classroom. Thanks so much for watching, guys.